I was playing a set with Just a Kid this weekend off stream, and someone in the chat, while Just a Kid was up at this moment in the set versus me, said, "Wow, I can't believe how Brian is playing. He never plays this way against me." And that really just annoyed the shit out of me. When people say things like that, they're disparaging and downplaying both people playing the set to make the focus about themselves. It's a way to shift the focus from both players to say, oh no, he plays good against me and bad against you. It's not anything that you're doing to force a situation, to force mistakes. It's all because of the time of the day when I may be playing well. And I think that annoys me. It's just a pet peeve of mine. Injecting yourself as the focus. Saying that a player never plays its way against me, it's because you're not good enough to force mistakes. That's just the truth of the matter. And so that got me thinking of what are the types of things that annoy you in FGC culture and fighting games, in the games itself. I shot out this tweet. You know what I want to hear? What are your fighting game pet peeves, in-game culture, habits, competitions, whatever? Reply with yours and we'll talk about the responses on the next stream. That stream is today. However, what I was not expecting was to get about 300 responses. So we're going to kind of scroll through and look for the good ones and then talk about them, because I did not expect this to quite take off the way it did. Saito says, people who think that fighting games must be played a certain way or only optimally because that's what they were led to believe. People do like to reduce the way fighting games should be played pretty often and kind of get annoyed if you play outside of it. Like when you get hit by an off-meta decision, something that feels dumb on the surface, yet you still get hit by it, it can be very annoying to players. And players will often react out of disdain and frustration by being hit by something so dumb, something that you shouldn't be doing. So, I mean, yeah, there's some truth to that. That's one of the things that I think is the hardest for a player like me to learn, is how to employ that conditioning. This dude is mashing sweep, he might be, but if those sweeps land, he's got a point. These two kind of go together, but people who downplay their character constantly, but refuse to switch. 2, people who call top tier characters cheap and easy, but refuse to pick said characters up. Yeah, I hate low tier warriors. Gotta say, I kinda don't like it. Kinda don't like people complaining about their character nonstop. It's a little bit like, why don't you just get good? Have you considered? Because the worst part is, for every low tier you're talking about, there's always so many players who also play that low tier character and have good results, have taken names, establishes themselves in the community. I just clearly remember an example of some dude doing that with DJ back in Street Fighter 4 at some tournament. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know the crew he was with. I just kept overhearing him. And this was in 2015 of Street Fighter 4. At that point, you just got to accept that that's just how the character is. Either get good with them or move on, my man. I mean, you based your whole identity around complaining. Not a fan. One from Hi-Fi, Lord Hi-Fi. Let's see here. People can't stop watching talking about the game they apparently hate so much. I mean, this is obviously the Street Fighter V syndrome. I mean, the fact of the matter is Street Fighter V, its launch, the gameplay, destroyed a lot of goodwill in the FGC. You know, like it or not, Street Fighter V is still, I think, the largest fighting game. So it's going to have the most scrutiny and the most people who are going to critique it and hold it to a higher standard than every other franchise. So it's just how it is. It is kind of weird that people do that. Yeah, I'm not including Smash, obviously. Smash is not really part of the core FGC. I love Smash, but when people talk about Street Fighter V and FGC, they're usually not including Smash. Street Fighter V is still on top in a lot of ways. I think Tekken has the most momentum, and Tekken is poised to overtake it. On some metrics, other games do better, like Mortal Kombat sells the best. Tekken does really well in sales, but I think as an established competitive series, Street Fighter V is still like the #1 game, not by much. Unnecessary resets. Yeah, I actually really hate playing against someone who's doing a combo and then drops their combo and resets it into a regular grab. It doesn't add anything to their game. They do less damage, get worse positioning, less meter, but it just feels bad that you got hit by a dumb reset like that. Comeback factors that try to stimulate real high, V-trigger, X-factor, sparking, etc., etc. I sometimes feel this and sometimes don't. It's hard to say, like as an 09er, right? People who have joined in 09 or later have always been around comeback mechanics if you came from Capcom games. It started with Ultras and Street Fighter 4. But it's kind of hard to say 100% if a mechanic is a comeback mechanic because they often have different factors to them. One's like V-trigger. V-trigger can be seen as way too powerful because it can turn the tide of a match in one moment, but there is an element of strategy behind V-triggers using V-reversals, a defensive option, or storing it for an offensive option, and then also the utility of the V-trigger cancel itself, but it can get overpowered by how powerful the power-up is once they burn it. So I'm kind of torn on that. I think V-trigger, X-Factor is probably the worst offender, followed by V-trigger. I don't think sparking is anywhere near as offensive as a comeback mechanic as these two. When I lose, always a pet peeve with me. Bad netcode on every game, LMAO. Yeah, kind of sucks. Kind of sucks that every game sucks online. Not a fan of that. My fighting game pet peeve is the fucking alpha wannabe try-hard culture. I'm not talking about flexing on your friends or trash talk or even reasonable amounts of salt, but the kind of people who send you DMs accusing you of lag switching whenever they lose online. It's a fighting game. I think this is just online gaming. I don't think this is at all exclusive to fighting games. This is the shit you deal with when you play 2K, when you play FIFA, when you play literally any game ever. I've gotten way more hate mail and hate messages playing Gears of War and Halo back in the day than I ever got playing fighting games. This guy must play Mortal Kombat. Here's one from Ultra David. When players use the word should before the word does, like this move should work the way I want, and it's BS that it does not, instead of this move does not work the way I want, so here's what else I should do. This one is big to me, and the biggest offenders of this I see are in the Smash community, because people always say like this move doesn't work. That's a pet peeve of mine. This move doesn't work. I feel like that's such an egotistical interpretation of any mechanic or any move in a game, because the move works exactly as it's programmed to work. Very, very few moves actually don't work the way the developers intended to. And those are like usually in older games or bugs, right? Straight up bugs. If a move doesn't have a good hurt box or doesn't have a good hit box or doesn't always combo in a certain way, that's not because it should. That's because that's the way it was intended. And maybe you want it to be stronger, but that's not the way it should work. That's the way it does work. And I see Smash people talk about that all the time. It's so strange. Yes, but tap should be plus on block. Tap should be plus on block, of course. My pet peeve is when players talk about a character they personally don't like as though they are objectively annoying or broken, like their opinion is fact. Yeah. I think you gotta get used to people shit talking your character. Just remember that every character is broken and they all suck. I wish they allowed having a mic. A weird pet peeve. I guess I do miss the days of PC Street Fighter 4 when I would just be beating the shit out of somebody who didn't know their mic was on and they were just bitching the whole time. I could hear all their complaints before they rage quit. I really hate stun as a mechanic. It rewards the winner and punishes the loser in a way I don't like. So it's the opposite of a comeback mechanic. You guys are clowning on them, but that's kind of a whole design philosophy with Mortal Kombat. There's an interview with Ed Boon who said he loved the way getting a stun felt, but he hated the way it made him feel when he got stunned. So he put the stun at the end of the round, which is where fatalities came from. Fatalities in the post KO hit, you know? So I don't know. I can see how people dislike it. I'm just so conditioned to having stun in Street Fighter that it doesn't faze me. People who don't finish a best of 3 set after you figure out their crazy Gesame plan game 2. That drives me nuts too. Someone wins the first game in a first to 2. You win the second, and then they don't run it back. They dip, and it's because they know they got figured out. The best way to make it suck less is just realize that whoever that was is a bitch and is scared of you being better than them. They're like, oh shit, I'm a gimmick and I can't adapt. I'm a one-trick pony, and it's time to run. Locals being the band-aid for bad online. I thought this was such an interesting point. Isn't it kind of fucking insane that in order to play fighting games, you have to go to somebody's garage? You ever thought about like when you used to play normal games and you weren't part of the FGC, how you would just play online? It's kind of interesting because, you know, in the FGC, we have a big culture of supporting your locals, showing up and supporting. But if you really think about it, why are we forced to do that? If COVID wasn't around, to get good gameplay, you are forced to meet up with people offline. And think about any other video game ever. No one fucking meets up with strangers to be able to play the game. Now, locals offer a lot more than just being able to play the game. You form a community, form friends, form bonds, training partners, exchange ideas, discussions. It's a lot more than that, which is the beauty of it. But it's weird that we had to do that. I kind of totally agree with that one. This is more so in Street Fighter, but people complaining about characters not playing real Street Fighter, but don't realize that a game full of Shotos only would be the most sleep shit of all time. Yeah, when people say this character's not playing real Street Fighter, I think they're just complaining. Every Street Fighter game has had all kinds of weird ass archetypes and characters. Once Street Fighter 2 happened, they opened up the floodgates. All those archetypes in Street Fighter 2 are so fucking off the wall. That's where Blanca came from, and I hear people call Blanca not real Street Fighter all the time. There's no one defined style that makes up Street Fighter. I always hated those guys that see long combos and just think that you never get to play because you got hit once when it's not the case. That and the obsession with some players have with footsies, neutral, and no bullshit. Yeah, that's a big misconception with beginners or people who aren't used to the FGC and fighting games, but in some sense, for their experience, it can be true. If you don't know how to play the game, once you get hit, in most fighting games, it really does remove control from you. And oftentimes what happens is they don't really understand the transition between the combo and then the end of the combo when it's their turn to interact with the opponent again. That transition can happen so fast and it can be reset into another combo if you don't know what's going on, that for new players, this really is how the games work. People might say, I can't do anything, and really what you're doing is a 2-hit combo over and over, but they're not blocking the next part. You finish one combo, they're just not blocking, they get hit by the next part. They feel like they're an infinite combo. I can't do anything. Well, yeah, you don't know what to do yet. So it's a problem with the learning curve with fighting games. And it is a pet peeve, but I understand why it happens. My pet peeve is people calling me out for farming Twitter for YouTube content. All right, you got me. No one should say this. When people say Wi-Fi is fine for fighting games, I don't understand. X character can't be allowed to be good because I don't like playing against them. Yeah, I mean, I understand. But that said, Geef should never be good. When the winner says GG first after the set, I kind of say GG's real fast. This might be targeted to me. In person, I don't do that. In person, there's a whole meta in offline tournaments when you beat somebody, you got to read their body language, right? Because you got to know when you go in for the handshake or the fist bump. So they're probably gonna look up, look down, do some kind of whatever. When they finally address you with their body language, that's when you go in for the GGs. You also have to let time pass, and if too much time is expiring while they're not acknowledging you, you need to start packing up and moving away, right? There's a whole meta to it. I remember one time I played an Armika player in 2017. I pretty much quadruple perfected him. He got one hit, like one jab in one of the rounds, and then I perfected him every other round, including the last round. I remember him sitting there with his stick, just sitting there looking down, and he just put his hand out. And I just had to look at him and just wait. And then when he put his hand out, I just shook it and walked away. I didn't say anything. I didn't offer him any advice, any comfort. It's just like, let him lead the way. In those kind of situations, you got to let the loser kind of guide you. He gave me the hand, I shook it, and I let him be. My only real pet peeve is that some people forget to find some fun in fighting games. I know getting better and winning as much as you can, taking losses and learning is important. I think a lot of us get lost in it and forget to have fun with it too. No fun allowed. You know the rules. Most definitely tournament chats, just saying. Tournament chats are pretty bad, especially if you're more embedded in the FGC. They can be really fucking bad. The tournament chat is a lot like any kind of sports television, where you're so far removed from the action and so far removed from having any influence that, it's okay to yell at the screen and call the best player in the world a fucking idiot, say that coach is garbage and should be fired, etc., etc. You obviously have no idea what you're talking about, but you're so far removed from the action that that's part of the fun. But for video games and fighting games, it's a little bit different because the people talking shit in the stream chat, there's nothing stopping them from being the people on stream putting their butts on the line, putting their pride out there and holding the L on stream for you to be able to make fun of them. There's literally nothing stopping you from being that person instead. It's not like it takes years of physical training, good genetics, and having the right support system to go through college athletics and to be drafted to be a pro. And there's so many layers in pro sports that you're so far removed that you will never even meet this person. But the person in the stream chat who talks all that shit, that can be you easily. Why don't you put down the keyboard and step out, and then you sit down and play this game? You sit down and see how you do, and then have everybody talk shit about you. It was a weird transition for me to go from like being the memester in the chat and then people talking shit about me in stream chats. It's just like, bro, I'm also here like watching the tournament streams and chat with you all the time. OG says, people who always put winning over getting better, not wanting to play a couple sets and talk about it. There's a bit of an issue with that, I think, in American FGC culture. When I play sets, I kind of want to grind out a ton of matches and get experience. I don't think I deal with that much, though, on my end. I don't know if anyone ever does that to me, but it can be annoying when people try to use you as like a measuring stick. They just want to play you in order to beat you, to say that they beat you, and it's really shitty to hold that over the person that you're playing against. Because you should be sparring, you should be training partners in that moment. So you shouldn't use that as something to hold over them. Because one day it's going to be you losing. People that actively downplay or nitpick how they're performing, saying they could have done something better or that wasn't optimal while they're kicking your ass. I just find this one funny because when I'm streaming, this is all I do. I mean, I don't do that in person when I'm playing against somebody, but I mean, literally as a streamer, this is what you do. When I'm playing against somebody and I miss a punish, I say, oh, I should have punished this harder. I guess I don't get them on a voice call and tell them that to their face. Bro, I would have fucking destroyed your ass. I hit my meaty 1-frame optimal conversion. Instant unreactable neutral skipping specials that are near impossible to punish, and sometimes inexplicably have armor. Urian EX tackle, Brawly armor tackle, etc. This one is interesting to me because I understand why these moves are frustrating. Dealing with them is really annoying, but I think a pet peeve of mine is people calling this stuff neutral skipping. I can understand you might not like the neutral including those options, but you know that's kind of the neutral with these characters. You know what I'm saying? You're kind of, just by definition, these are the options they have in neutral, and you know, Urian has a limited amount of EX meter, so maybe you can try baiting out the EX tackle in neutral. Then they have less options in neutral. You get what I'm saying? I understand the moves become obnoxious though, but this kind of phrasing is once again sort of implying that the game is not working the way you want it to, and that's not neutral. You might not like the design of it, but that is the neutral of the game. But Brawly is annoying as fuck. I hate Broly. S Broly, DBFZ, whack. People who overreact to nerfs the moment a patch drops before taking time to see how the character feels. This is what comes up every single time Akuma gets adjusted. Akuma's ruined. It's over. It's done. And then he's still top tier. Still top 3, top 1. The players who solely rely on pro players tier lists instead of thinking for themselves. I see a lot of these kind of comments of people saying relying on pro players' opinions. First of all, there's like 3 pro players in the world. One of my pet peeves is people who throw around the term pro players. I don't know who decided that. There's like 3 or 4 maybe pro players that exist. We're not League of Legends. There's no pro card. There's no league. There's a very limited number of players whose sole source of income comes from fighting games. I see this thrown in my direction too, and I'm like, bro, this is not my day job. Anyways, I think this is kind of strange because I feel like you want to get many different opinions and perspectives on a game and its roster. If you're going to do anything like making a tier list, why would you not want perspectives from players who are good? They're all going to have different opinions and they're going to be biased, of course. But I don't understand. Do you want a bunch of tier lists from bad players? I hear the opinions of bad players all the time. That would be a really cool looking tier list. I'm pretty sure Ken and Balrog would be top 1 and 2. Simps. True. Got a cool kid here. People that basically down themselves before the match even starts. I'm trash, so I know I might get destroyed. And when dudes give up mid-match, those are my biggest pet peeves. I don't encounter too many of these types of players. I think you got to meet them in offline events, but I think it's a pretty common thing for people to downplay themselves. I think there's a mentality of like, if you're a newer player, you kind of know your level, and then you go up against a better player in casuals. I feel like some players, they want to apologize for wasting your time. You don't need to do that. But what is annoying is when people do that as planting the seed. Oh, I'm so bad, I'm terrible, and then they end up being fucking nice. And then you start losing to them, and you're like, this guy's supposed to be bad. I'm not supposed to lose to somebody who's bad, because then I'm bad. And if I'm bad, what have I been doing all this time? Who am I? Right? I agree with that. They are definitely planting the seed. I never listened to that shit. I definitely call them out on that. Hearing a pro talk about community building / helping players grow, then doing something like beat a rando scrub on stream while openly mocking their lack of knowledge. Ooh, is that me? Oh no, it must not be. He said pro. He must be talking about Daigo or something. People hoarding knowledge. STSFN. Oh god. I could feel my brain figuring this out. Save that shit for nationals. Oh no, I'm a fighting game boomer. Oh, I'm old. Save that shit for nationals doesn't apply when we're playing casuals and I'm trying to learn the matchup. Just fucking tell me if that move is plus or not when I ask. Yeah, I agree. When we're playing casuals, I'll talk. I like to talk about shit the whole time. I ask questions like this too. I definitely encourage talking about questions and stuff like that. The term fuzzy, I've heard like 12 different uses for it. And there's the fuzzy guard. He went for the fuzzy there. I'm beginning to think fuzzy just means whatever you want it to mean. Now you're getting it. Fuzzy depends on the audience, the speaker, the game, the time of day. I think a lot of communities just replace OSs with fuzzy. Like when the OS doesn't seem fancy, they call it a fuzzy. In Street Fighter, a fuzzy guard is defined by hitting the opponent when their hurt box doesn't match the animation on screen. You do a jump in, they block the jump in. Then you do an instant overhead. They're crouching, but their hurt box is still standing. That's a fuzzy, right? But go talk to a Dragon Ball player. They call it fuzzy blocking when they block high because the overhead hits first, and then the low hits on a few frames later. So they just do the fuzzy blocking, they call it, where they block high, then 4 frames later they block low. To me, that's an option select. People not knowing basic hygiene? Oh boy. Yep. Saying someone is washed up because they took 4th instead of 1st at one event or something comparable. Calling a game dead just because you're short-sighted or in your own bubble and have no clue that the game's just fine competitively. Other stuff I can't fit in one tweet. Yeah, stream monsters are dumb, but this one's pretty interesting. I feel like people are very defensive over the dead game title. Hold on, let me find one in here. There was someone talking about Discord fighters. I guess this guy summed it up for me. Pet peeve, Discord fighters. To the point. I don't know exactly what he means by that, but I do have a pet peeve when people say that a game is doing just fine, just get on Discord to find people to play with. I don't know why people act like that's an okay thing. It's a supplement to a broken system. The last resort for people who are forced to do that. Not so bad, lots of good matches. Yeah, for you, because you're an FGC head. But for the dude that plays 2K on Wi-Fi, it doesn't exist. I don't want to talk to people to play games. I don't know why people act like it's a good thing, or that it's not a huge inconvenience. It is. It really is a huge inconvenience. It's better than nothing for sure. It's a good backup and a good community-driven effort. I don't want to discredit that, but I don't know why people act like it's a good state to be in, that you can go on Discord and fight games. It's not a good state to be in. I don't think it's fair to call a game dead because you do have to see games via Discord. I think that's 100% fair. I think people get caught up on how final dead is and how harsh it sounds. That's just kind of how people talk on the internet. I think if you cannot find a game via matchmaking, it's dead. That's kind of how I feel about it. Maybe there should be a better term for it, because dead it's dismissive of the people putting in work for their community and keeping the game alive for their community to play each other. But there is something to that. If I can't just pop the game in and play it, there's a problem there. I don't know what you want to call it, but that's a problem. I think if we're in the community, if we're within the bubble, we should try to be more sensitive to that, because that can reinforce the fact. But I don't know, man, like 10K people watching Max play MVC3, because Max isn't dead. What are you talking about? Oh boy, Max is playing MVC3. Let me turn on my copy of MVC3 on PS3 and play Nobody. Max is there like, gather on, children. Let me show you ye old Marvel 3 back in my day. This is what we used to play. This is what got me started. No one else can play it. None of those 10K people are playing the game. If you can't just play the game on its native system platform, probably dead. Melee is like the only exception I could think of. Melee is the only game in that category that I can firmly call alive. No one plays it on the native platform. They play it on Slippy Online. I think we need two different terms. Within the community, these games are alive, but to the outside world, they're isolated. I don't know what you want to call them. They're lost. They're forgotten. They're disconnected. Dormant games, maybe? Godforsaken. It's godforsaken games. Lost to the annals of online, only to be found by the ancient scholars of Discord, archiving their essence. Those who dare travel down the dark depths. You gotta follow a treasure map and a cryptic sphinx puzzle to find games. Pretty much.